They told you there were two kinds of men. The first kind is hard, loud, dominant. He takes what he wants, controls the room, and never lets anyone see him bleed. He calls it strength. The internet sells it as alpha. The second kind was handed to you by the church. Gentle, agreeable, soft-spoken. He turns the other cheek so many times he forgets he has a spine. He calls it humility. The world calls him harmless. Here's what nobody told you. Both of those men are lost. One performs strength he doesn't actually have. The other suppresses strength he was never taught to use. Neither one knows what real masculinity looks like. Nobody showed them. And that's not their fault, but it is their problem. And if you're watching this, it might be yours too. The most dangerous lie in the history of masculinity isn't that men are bad. It's that strength means dominance, or that goodness means weakness. Those two lies have been running in the background of every man's life for decades, and most men never even noticed them. It's not about being hard. It never was. And it's not about being nice either. Those are costumes. What we're talking about today is something underneath both of them, something most men have never been taught to find. In this video, we're going to cover 5 things most men have never been shown about what it really means to be a man. Not the performance version, not the passive version, the real one. These aren't motivational talking points. They are load-bearing truths, the kind that once you see them, you can't unsee. Ignoring this hasn't just cost you confidence or status. It has shaped your decisions, your relationships, and the man your sons are quietly learning to become. That cost is already running. The last one on this list is the one that will make you rethink everything you heard before it. Stay until the end. Most men will never sit with this long enough to let it change them. They'll watch, nod, and scroll. But you're still here. That means something. Modern men have forgotten what they were built to carry. You're about to remember. Let's get started. Number 1, the wall test. And here's why it changes everything. You're scrolling. A woman shows up on your feed. You stop. You stare. You double tap. And then you keep scrolling like nothing happened. Your wife didn't see it. She's in the other room, probably folding laundry or putting the kids to bed. She has no idea. Your daughter will never know that thought crossed your mind. Nobody saw the 10 seconds you just spent somewhere you shouldn't have been. Nobody's keeping score, except you. And somewhere underneath the scroll, underneath the next video, the next distraction, the next thing you reached for before the discomfort could land something in you, registered it. A small withdrawal from an account you didn't know you were spending. A quiet vote cast for the man you're becoming. Not the man you tell people you are, the one you actually are when no one's watching. That's not a moral lecture. That's a mirror. Because here's what that moment really was. It wasn't lust. It wasn't weakness. It wasn't even about her. It was a light touch. And you yielded to it instantly, without a fight, without even a pause. And that is the wall test. Most men are failing it 30 times before noon. Number 2, the governing man. Here's something the culture gets completely wrong about masculine strength. It tells you that a strong man doesn't feel, that emotion is weakness, that the goal is to be stone unaffected, unmoved, untouchable. That is not strength. That is suppression, wearing a mask. And suppression always has a bill. You can ignore it for years, but eventually the bill comes due. Every time. In a marriage, in a moment of pressure, in a conversation with your son where you shut down instead of showing up. The goal was never to kill the fire. The goal is to govern it. Think about a war horse. A cavalry horse trained for battle is not a calm animal by nature. It is powerful, reactive, and driven by instinct. Left unbroken, it's dangerous to everyone around it. But a properly trained war horse doesn't lose its fire. It learns to channel it. The rider doesn't eliminate the horse's power. He directs it. The horse becomes more dangerous because of the training, not less. That is the model. Not suppression, governance. The man who has never learned to govern his anger doesn't become peaceful, he becomes volatile. He explodes at his kids over small things. He's been compressing pressure with no outlet and no framework. He goes cold on his wife not because he's strong, but because he never learned what to do with what he feels. The man who governs his emotions knows when to be still and when to move. He can sit in a hard conversation without shutting down or blowing up. He can feel the weight of a moment and still make a clear decision. He is present, not performing calm, actually calm. Because his internal world is under his authority, not running him from the background. Here's the application. The next time you feel a strong emotion, rising frustration, shame, jealousy, rage, don't suppress it and don't feed it. Name it. Out loud if you have to. I'm angry right now. That one act of naming breaks the automatic chain between feeling and reaction. It puts a half second of choice between impulse and action. That half second is where character lives. Strong but controlled. That's not a limitation. That's the whole definition. Number 3, the broken line. And this is the one that's going to be the hardest to hear. Not because it's complicated, because it's close. Think about the man who raised you, or the man who was supposed to. Maybe he was there physically, sitting at the dinner table, watching the game, paying the bills. But something essential was missing. He never taught you how to handle anger without destroying something. Never showed you what it looks like to lead a family with both strength and tenderness. Never sat across from you and said, "Here's what it means to be a man." Not because he didn't care, but because nobody told him either. His father didn't teach him, and his father's father didn't teach that man. The line goes back further than you think. This is what's called a broken line. Not a broken home, a broken line. A chain of men, generation after generation, each one passing forward the same unfinished blueprint, the same unexamined wounds, the same blind spots wrapped in silence and called strength. And here's the part that hits hardest. You didn't choose this. You inherited it. The way a man inherits his father's debts, not because he spent the money, but because he carries the name. But inheritance is not destiny. That's the lie the broken line wants you to believe. Think about a load-bearing chain, the kind used to anchor something heavy. Every link was forged by the link before it. If the third link was bent, not broken, just slightly bent, every link after it carries that bend, the chain still holds. But it doesn't hang straight. And over time, under pressure, the bend becomes the point of failure. You are a link in that chain. So is your son. So is his son. The question is not whether the chain was damaged before you. It was. The question is what shape you pass forward. The same applies to every man watching this. You can spend your life resenting the bend you inherited, or you can be the link that gets forged straight, so everything after you hangs differently. That is not a small decision. That is the most consequential thing a man can do with his life. Here's what makes this hard. When most men finally see the broken line clearly, they feel one of two things: anger at the men who came before them, or guilt about the damage already done. Both of those are understandable. Neither of them builds anything. What builds something is a decision, a quiet, non-dramatic, irreversible decision. I am the man who changes this. Not for yourself. You're already grown. The wounds you carry from that broken line, some of them are yours to live with. That's the honest truth. But the men who come after you, your sons, the young men watching you work, the nephews sitting at your table, they are still being formed. And they are learning from you right now, whether you're teaching intentionally or not. So here's the application. Find one pattern you inherited that you know is wrong. Not a flaw, a pattern. The way you shut down when a conversation gets hard. The way you disappear into work when the family needs your presence. The way you never say, "I love you" first because your father never said it either. Name it. Write it down if you have to. And then make the decision out loud to yourself that this pattern ends with you. Be the man your family needs, not the man your wounds made you, the man your choice builds you into. You can be the first in your line who gets this right. That's not a burden. That's a calling. Number 4, the table flipper. We need to talk about the man most people in the church never let you see. Not the gentle shepherd with soft hands and a peaceful smile. The man who walked into the temple, looked at what was happening, and methodically, not impulsively, methodically braided a whip. Then flipped tables, drove out the merchants, disrupted an entire system that powerful men had built and protected for years. That same man knelt down and washed the feet of the people he led. He sat with the broken, the outcast, the ones everyone else had written off. He wept at the grave of his friend, openly, without apology. This is not a contradiction. This is the model. And the fact that most men have never been shown this version, the full version, is one of the great failures of masculine formation in our time. Because what gets preached from one side is a Christ so gentle he has no spine, and what gets sold on the other side is dominance so hollow it has no soul. Both of them miss the same thing: power under control, not power suppressed, not power performed. Power that knows exactly when to be still and when to overturn every table in the room. Think about a lion, not a lion in a cage, a lion in his own territory. He doesn't pace, he doesn't posture, he doesn't need to announce himself. He moves with complete economy of force, slow when slowness serves, explosive when explosion is required. The other animals don't fear him because he's always attacking. They respect him because he could, and he chooses when. That is not aggression. That is authority. And authority is what every man watching this is actually hungry for. Not dominance over others, authority over himself, and the credibility that comes from being the kind of man who has earned the right to lead. The strongest men in any room are rarely the loudest. They're the ones who don't need the room to validate them. They've already done the internal work. They know who they are, and because they know, they can afford to be tender with their kids, with their wives, with the men coming up behind them, without anyone mistaking that tenderness for weakness. That's the full model: strength and service, courage and gentleness. A man dangerous enough to be worth choosing, and disciplined enough to be trusted with what he protects. Fear God, not men. A man who knows what he answers to cannot be controlled by what he wants to be seen as. Here's the application. This week, Find one place in your life where you've been performing one of the two false versions. Either you've been loud and dominant where you should have been present and steady, or you've been passive and agreeable where you should have held the line. Pick one and make one deliberate move in the right direction, not a dramatic overhaul. One move. Strength corrects quietly. It doesn't announce itself. And the last one, number 5, the legacy lens. Not because it's hidden, because it's slow. And men who are used to measuring strength by what they can see and control, in the next 30 days, those men almost always miss this one. Here's what it is. Every decision you make, every pattern you keep, every habit you feed is being watched. Every morning you rise with intention, or every morning you don't, it's being watched. Not by the world, not by your boss, or your peers, or the people whose opinion you've been managing for years. By the man who comes after you, your son, your nephew, the young man at your church who doesn't have a father and has quietly decided you are the closest thing he's found to one. He's not watching your highlight reel. He's watching what you do when you think nobody's paying attention. He's watching how you treat your wife when the two of you are tired and the romance is nowhere in sight. He's watching whether you open that Bible or whether it sits on the nightstand collecting dust next to the phone you actually spend your time on. He's watching whether you go back and apologize when you're wrong, or whether your pride wins that fight every single time. He is learning what a man is from you right now. That is the legacy lens. And once you see through it, you cannot unsee it. There was a Roman general, a man who had spent his life in battle, building roads, fortifying borders, establishing order in places that had known only chaos. In his later years, long after the fighting was done, he spent his mornings planting trees, oak trees, trees that would take 60, 70, 80 years to reach their full size. Trees whose shade he would never sit under. Someone asked him why. He was old. The work was hard. The payoff was decades away. He said, "I plant for those who come after me." That is not a philosophical statement. That is a definition of manhood. The boy lives for now. The man lives for what outlasts him. And the distance between those two orientations, between living for the next hit of dopamine and living for the shape of what you leave behind that distance, is the entire game. The same applies to every man watching this. You will not be here forever. The question is not whether you leave something behind. You will. Every man does. The question is what it is. A pattern of strength and integrity that the next generation inherits and builds on. Or a broken line passed forward one more time to one more son who will spend his 40s trying to figure out what his father never taught him. That choice is being made right now, not in some future moment when you've got everything figured out. Now, today, in the quiet decisions nobody sees. Here's what makes the legacy lens different from every other framework in this video. The wall test, the governing man, the broken line, the table flipper, all of those are about who you are. The legacy lens is about what you're for. And a man who knows what he's for cannot be broken by what he's going through, because the suffering has a container. The hard season has a purpose. The sacrifice has a name on it, and that name belongs to someone he loves more than his own comfort. That is not weakness. That is the deepest form of strength a man can carry. Why? Because it costs something. Comfort is cheap. Legacy is expensive. And the men who build something that outlasts them, they paid for it in early mornings, in hard conversations, in choosing the right thing when the easy thing was right there. They paid for it in years, and they did it without applause, without an audience, without a highlight reel. They just showed up, consistently, quietly, completely. Here's the application. Tonight, not next week, tonight, ask yourself one question. If the young man watching you most closely right now inherited exactly the version of you that exists today, your habits, your patterns, your relationship with your word, your body, your family, your faith, would that be a gift or a burden? Don't answer it quickly. Sit with it. And then decide not what you want to become someday, but what you are going to do tomorrow morning that the man you want to be would actually do. One thing, concrete, specific. End quote. Something the man who comes after you would one day point to and say, that's where it changed. Real men leave legacies, not because they were perfect, because they were intentional. Because they decided at some quiet, unremarkable moment that nobody witnessed that the line would not stay broken on their watch. That is what it really means to be a man. Not a performance, not a posture, a decision made daily in the direction of something greater than yourself. Ironlegy, built one quiet day at a time. 5 things, one truth underneath all of them. The man who holds the line when no one is watching, who governs what runs inside him instead of being run by it, who looks at the broken line he inherited and decides quietly, irreversibly, that it ends with him, who carries both the whip and the towel, knowing exactly when each one is needed, who plants trees he will never sit under because the man who comes after him will need the shade. That is not a type of man the world produces on its own. That is a man who was built deliberately, painfully, over years of choices that nobody applauded and nobody saw. You already know which parts of this landed. You felt it when it hit. Don't let that feeling scroll away with the next video. Walk the talk. That's the whole thing, not the insight, the walk. If this kind of content is what you've been looking for, hit the like button and subscribe. It helps more men find it, and that matters. Until next time.